In the name of the triune God, who calls each living creature beloved. Please be seated. There was a psychologist that I'm sure many of you have heard of named Viktor Frankl, who survived 3 years in Auschwitz and Dachau during World War II. And after the war, he wrote one of the most influential books of the 20th century called Man's Search for Meaning. And in this book, he describes how the conditions of the concentration camps affected prisoners. And he said that he had seen over and over again that those prisoners who had found something to live for had a greater chance for survival, whereas those who had given up often succumbed to the brutal conditions of the camps and died. In particular, he described one fellow inmate who had dreamed that he'd been assured that the camp would be liberated on March 30th. And he told Viktor Frankl about this and had great hope. And on March 29th, when it became clear that there was no sign of liberation in the camp, he grew despondent. On March 30th, he got very ill. March 31st, he fell unconscious and died shortly thereafter. Frankl believed that it was the crushing disappointment of the loss of hope that made his immune system weak, and he immediately succumbed to the typhus that was rampant throughout the camp. He also talked about there were all these unexpected, there was a spike in the death rate that couldn't be explained in the week after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's, and he and other camp doctors attributed that to the disappointment of the hope for being reunited with their families by Christmas time. So Frankl came to believe that the most important thing in life was a sense of meaning and hope. He attributed a saying to Nietzsche, which is that one who has a why to live can endure almost any how. Well, thank God, there are very few in history who have lived through such brutal conditions as the concentration camps. But all of us do need a sense of meaning and purpose. You know, I think purpose involves both our origins, where we come from, who we most deeply are, and also our destination, a sense of hope and a future. And having a grounded sense of both origin and destination makes things possible in the present that might not otherwise be possible. In a way, it's sort of like the difference between zooming in and zooming out. Zooming in to just the surface conditions of the person or situation or transaction that's right in front of you, it's easy to get stuck. But zooming out provides a border around the current situation that lets us have context. It lets us remember where we've come from and where we're going and what our purpose is. And that reframes what's right here. And we in the church know at the biggest, most meta sense what our purpose is. Jesus describes it in today's gospel reading. He tells his disciples that he has a new commandment for them, that they should love one another as Jesus had loved them. He even says that love for one another is the way that the world will know that we are Jesus' disciples. What's interesting is that the commandment to love one another was not new. It was in Leviticus. In fact, it had been with the people of Israel since they were liberated from Egypt. But in Jesus, there was this sense that the ancient teachings of their tradition had come alive and were being embodied and utterly refreshed, as if the ink weren't even dry yet on the page. Maybe the difference was that Jesus didn't just talk about God or the commandments or the tradition. He experienced utter union with God and gave others that experience as well. He embodied the presence of God and showed us what loving looks like. Well, today the lectionary included a reading from Revelation that we didn't have in the bulletin, so I'm going to read parts of it to you. It says this: I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "See, the home of God is among mortals. God will dwell with them as their God. They will be his peoples, and God's own self will be with them. God will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away." And the one who was seated on the throne said, "See, I am making all things new." Then he said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water as a gift from the springs of the water of life." So listen to that again. The one seated on the throne says, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I am making everything new." You all probably know that Alpha and Omega are the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet, the beginning and the end, our origin and destination also. And so let's think about what that means. If our origin is in God, and our destination is in God, and that destination includes a vision of God dwelling with us, wiping tears from our eyes, then what today will be impossible for us? And conversely, if our origin is defective, if we fear the future, if we've lost hope, are we not defeated before we even begin? So many of us at St. John's are reading this book that you might have heard me mention once or twice, by John Philip Newell, called Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul. Staff have read it, the vestry is reading it, the Thursday night book group is reading it, the spirit group is reading it. You all just might as well get it and read it too. And it discusses a thread of Celtic teachers in a Christian church, stretching throughout time, who have taught us about the sacredness of the earth, the sacredness of our bodies, the sacredness of our souls, that do offer a contrast to what some of the teachings of the church have been over time. Newell talks about the difference between a theology of original sin and a theology of original blessing and sacredness. He asks, what if we understood Jesus' divinity not as absolutely unique and exceptional, but as showing us our ultimate origin and destination, as revealing the deepest truth of who we all most deeply are? If we believe we are totally depraved and that our ultimate destination in God is not assured, what does that mean about how we see each other and how we live? If we believe we come from God and that all things ultimately resolve and unite with God, how does that change how we operate toward each other? Don't get me wrong, we all make many mistakes, some of them truly awful. Auschwitz was a blasphemy against all that is good in this world. The racially motivated shooting in Buffalo this week was terrible. And some of us, in fact all of us, make mistakes that sometimes have real consequences. It will not do to be naive about the human capacity for evil or about our need for healing and forgiveness and transformation. But there is a world of difference between believing that we are essentially depraved and believing we are made in goodness. My parents joke about this. When I was 4, I guess, I was at some park, and I saw these kids across the park, and I was like, look, there's some little friends I haven't met yet. I wish I still always felt that way. Yeah. But if we believe we're all made in goodness, that would be our first instinct about each other. It'll give us the chance to zoom out from whatever we're currently stuck in. It will give us the chance to see that all of us are greater than the worst thing we've ever done. We can seek and serve Christ in all persons, loving our neighbor as ourselves, as our baptismal covenants ask us to do. So there was a Jesuit priest and scientist named Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who died in the 50s, and who Newell discusses in the book we're reading. Teilhard believed that God is shimmering within every created being. And he believed that God exists not just as positive energy, but as an actual presence that can love and be loved within the universe itself and within all things. And he taught about something that he called the omega point. Remember that word omega, the end, the last letter of the Greek alphabet? He believed that in the omega point, all things resolve into union with God at the very edge of time. Newell says this about Teilhard. Teilhard prophesied that the day will come when, after harnessing all the energies of earth and sea and sky, humanity will finally learn how to harness its greatest energy, love. On that day, he said, we will have discovered fire for the second time. At the St. John's Vestry retreat last weekend, your vestry was discussing the why of St. John's. And at the deepest place, we know that our why is always following Jesus' way of love. And you know what we agreed that looked like right now? It's Wendy's fraction in them. Look on page 11 of your bulletin. Wendy Smith, our own Wendy Smith, wrote this beautiful song, which is what we sing most weeks before communion. It says this: come to this meal, this feast of love and healing, this feast of forgiving. God will heal, forgive, and transform us. Zooming out, we see love. We are drawn together here by love, healed by love, sent forth from here to love and heal the world. Love is our Alpha and Omega, our beginning and end, the why that makes possible almost any how. Think about where you've come from. No matter what your human origins are, you were born from the love of God. What do you think your ultimate purpose is or destination is? If you throw up your hands and go, look, I can't see past emptying the dishwasher. No matter what success or failure or purpose you have or don't have in your life, what if you, along with all humanity, are made to experience and express utter union with God as Jesus does? And that you can best express this by loving your neighbor as yourself. So the next time you're faced with any situation or person that makes you feel stuck or angry or disgusted or whatever, consider zooming way out, seeing what we are all really made of, where we come from, where we're going. Given that, we can make space for each other within our own being. We can find it within ourselves to forgive and be forgiven, to perceive God shimmering within all things, to love and be loved by God. This is our why. If we will discover and harness this power of love, the power of God's own being, we will discover fire for the second time, and everything will be possible. Amen.